Hello, this is UZREPORT.NEWS and I'm Bahram, and here are our top news for today. Eminent poet, scholar and statesman Zahiriddin Muhammad Babur's 537th anniversary. 101 Uzbek soldiers, project expedition members have arrived in the Netherlands. Corruption in the Uzbek sport on agenda of a round table. Today marks the 537th anniversary of great poet, scientist and statesman Zahiriddin Muhammad Babur. Love for man and love for the motherland, happiness and despair, the desire to discover the whole world, all about was written in Babur's poems more than 5 centuries ago.
Creative work based on the ideas of humanism, justice and hope for a bright future is invaluable for the world literature. Babur, who died at the age of 47, left behind a rich literary and scientific legacy. Among his best-known works are Baburnama, his memoirs forming the best source for details of his life, exquisite lyrical ghazals and rubai. His poems are still relevant to the present-day youth. As a historian, geographer, ethnographer and encyclopedist, his works are widely recognized by the international scientific community. Poetry nights, cultural and educational events dedicated to Babur's birthday are being held in all regions across the country.
Zahiriddin Muhammad Babur was born in Andijan. Despite his long military campaigns, he was a peaceful man, a poet, writer, a humanist. He absorbed most of the cultural traditions as a child in Andijan, the birthplace of fine arts. The art had such a huge impact on him that even more than 36 years of hard struggle with the realities of life could not erase it. Babur also inherited a love of arranging gardens in accordance with the excellent architectural plans that prevailed in Central Asia at that time. Gardening was then a very popular occupation and craft. Whenever Babur went, thoughts of beautiful gardens and clean, fresh air of Andijan had never left him. He tried to recreate what he had been forced to leave behind. So strong was his love for gardens that in the autobiography, Baburnama, he made a will to be buried in the garden of his choice in Kabul, in a grave under the open sky, without any superstructure of it and without gatekeeper. For this reason, the gardens of Babur were built with tomb of the emperor, as Babur was founder of Baburi dynasty. The construction of the park with tomb was completed in 1529. Babur died on 25th December in 1930 in Agra. Because of uncertain political conditions prevailing at that time, he couldn't be buried in Kabul. His daughter, Gulbadan Begum, wrote about temporary tomb in Agra in the Humayunnama. It was only almost 10 years after his death that Babur's last wish was fulfilled. The exact date of reburial in Kabul is unknown, but undoubtedly the process took place no later than 1539. The structures of Babur's grave were significantly damaged in 20th century during numerous military operations, civil war, and vandalism. Reconstruction works were carried out in 2002, during which the tomb acquired its original appearance. During its existence, the architectural complex Bogi Babur has also undergone many changes. In the 30s of the last century, Babur's garden turned into a public park, and in the 80s, its modern arrangement was completed. However, during the war at the end of the century, most of the buildings were destroyed and trees were cut down. But in 2011, with the support of Afghan Ministry of Culture, the garden was completely restored.
The Central Bank of Uzbekistan listed on Thursday 9-month bonds worth 200 billion soms with a weighted average yield of 15% per annum, the central bank said. Bids for 336.9 billion soms were submitted during the auction. Government securities with similar maturity of 300 billion soms were also placed on February 5th. The yield of securities then amounted to 15.14% per annum. President Shavkat Mirziyoyev, in his recent session, spoke about the system of state border protection. The meeting saw representatives of State Security Service and Presidential Security Council.
He pointed out the requirement of modern automated border control systems, information and communication technologies, as well as the organization of coordinated interaction of troops with law enforcement agencies and state authorities. Mirziyoyev gave instructions to ensure the interaction between the border agencies of Central Asian states to increase the joint activities with various international organizations and provide the timely and high-quality implementation of agreements reached with foreign partners to enhance cross-border cooperation. Shavkat Mirziyoyev drew attention to the importance of creating favorable conditions for citizens and foreign guests when crossing the state border, which is designed to promote the growth of mutual trips, development of trade, tourist and cultural exchanges in the region.
Ambassador of Uzbekistan to Pakistan met with a well-known Islamic Sufi scholar, Pir Mohammed Babur, a leader of the Naqshbandi order. Ambassador Furqat Siddiqov and Mohammed Babur discussed the Sufis' leaders' forthcoming trips to Uzbekistan.
Pir Mohammed Babur thanked the Uzbek party for organizing the trip and for the opportunity to make a pilgrimage to religious shrines in Uzbekistan. According to the scholar, he'll be joined by business people and well-known religious experts, representatives of Naqshbandi order. The Naqshbandi order is a major Sunni spiritual order of Sufism. It got its name from Bahauddin Naqshbandi Bukhari, the founder of order, who was born in a village near Uzbek city Bukhara.
Expedition members of the 101 Uzbek Soldiers project have arrived in the Netherlands. On the way to the country destination, they also paid a visit to Germany, Netherlands, Poland, Belarus and Russia.
The expedition of the 101 Uzbek Soldiers project to the Netherlands began on February 11th with a visit to the graves of soldiers buried in the Losden Cemetery near the city of Amersfoort. The names of soldiers are inscribed on most headstones. 2 rows of headstones inscribed "Unknown Soviet Soldier" mark the graves of the 101 Central Asians. The expedition members honored the memory of the soldiers resting in the Losden Cemetery and prayed. Then, a handful of earth brought from Nurata province was scattered at the gravestone of the soldier Said Kulkahara from Navoy, who was also buried in this cemetery. After that, the expedition members visited the square where the Amersfoort concentration camp was previously located, and where on the 9th of April 1942, 101 Central Asian soldiers were massacred. With the help of the Uzbek embassy to the Benelux nations, the expedition members met with the well-known Dutch historian and journalist Remco Reding. Thanks to the efforts of Remco Reding, the fate of the 101 Uzbek soldiers who were brought to the Amersfoort concentration camp after being captured near Smolensk in the first weeks after the German invasion of the Soviet Union became known not only in the Netherlands and Uzbekistan, but also in many countries of the world. Remco Reding recently traveled to Uzbekistan, where he met with the officials of the Uzbek Kino National Agency and got acquainted with the process of filming a documentary dedicated to the memory of the 101 Uzbek soldier. Mr. Reding and the group members discussed the issues related to identification of the 101 Uzbek soldiers, initiating events dedicated to the memory of soldiers in Uzbekistan and the Netherlands, as well as organizing visits of delegations. As part of the second phase, the expedition plans to organize a trip of a group of people from Uzbekistan to the Netherlands in May 2020 to visit the Losden Cemetery and the execution place and meet with witnesses who remember the Uzbek prisoners of the concentration camp, as well as to speak to Dutch historians and researchers. The Embassy of the Republic of Uzbekistan to the Benelux countries will actively participate in organization of these events.
On the Soviet Field of Honor in the Netherlands, 1 soldier was buried from Nurata, Navoyskaya Oblast, and we are very happy that a delegation from Navoy has come to the Netherlands to visit the grave of this soldier, Said Kakharov. For us it's very important that those soldiers will not be forgotten, and it was very touching to see that some ground from Nurata was brought to this cemetery and spread around the grave of Said Kakharov. And we're also very happy that some ground was taken from here and it will be placed in the National Park Pabede, the Park of the Victory in Tashkent, so that ground from the Netherlands and ground from Uzbekistan will be united, and those soldiers buried here are no longer forgotten. And I'm very happy that we as a foundation Soviet Field of Honor, can take part in this, and we are very happy to continue our cooperation with Uzbekistan and with Navoyskaya Oblast and the governor in particular.
Uzbek deputies have worked out a new bill intended to simplify the requirements for the issuance of corporate bonds, improve the market competitiveness of the national fund, as well as to create opportunities for businesses to attract free resources. This and other bills were under scrutiny at the regular session of Oli Majlis.
The first issue on the agenda was bill providing for amendments and additions to the law on securities market. In accordance with the current legislation, regardless of the legal form of joint stock companies, only banks can issue corporate bonds.
Ushbu cheklovchi normalar ta'sirida
Because of these restrictive rules, securities market of Uzbekistan is still lagging behind. If we look at the situation during 2010-2018, the number of bonds fell to 41%, while their number in circulation decreased from 512 billion sums to 198 billion sums. As a result, their market value of joint stock companies remain at the bottom. This document also provides for a number of innovations. In particular, limited and additional liability companies are granted with the right to issue corporate and infrastructure bonds. The authority to regulate the security market will be transferred to the state body, the Agency for the Development of the Capital Market. The meeting also presented a new version of law on geodesy and cartographic activity, which was adopted 2 decades ago and does not meet the requirements of today.
The delegation comprised of Research Center for the Restoration of Cultural Heritage and Art Objects, as well as the Fund for the Development of Culture and Art under the Ministry of Culture of Uzbekistan, is in the United States these days. The purpose of the trip is to study foreign experience in the creation and development of restoration institutions, the use of modern methods and equipment, and conservation and the professional development of employees.
According to the Embassy of Uzbekistan in Washington, during the first part of the visit, the delegation held meetings with the management of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, heads of its conservation and thematic departments. The parties held negotiations about the possibilities of organizing an exhibition of Uzbek art at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, improving the skills of local experts and helping to establish a research center for the restoration of cultural heritage and art objects. Today, the museum's permanent collection contains more than 2 million works of art. The collection of prints is extremely large. Quincy Houghton, Deputy Director of Metropolitan Museum, responsible for the organization of exhibitions, assured her readiness to assist in organizing an exhibition of art objects about Uzbekistan after 2025. The delegation of the Ministry of Culture enjoyed a detailed tour to all conservation departments of the Metropolitan, in particular at the Center of the Restoration of Textile Items named Antonio Ratti. The delegates were able to witness the entire cycle of restoration work, labs and modern technologies for the study and processing of textile products. The lab consists of several rooms of different sizes which are equipped with the necessary equipment and tools for restoration work. The sides reached an agreement to establish communication between domestic experts and the metro specialists, organize internship for Uzbek specialists on a free basis, and cooperate in training promising personnel in the field of restoration.
President Shavkat Mirziyoyev has recently signed a decree on additional measures to improve the efficiency of the International Innovation Center under the Aral Sea region. And now, with a goal to eliminate the consequences of the drought in the sea and increase the number of tourists, he has initiated the project My Garden in the Aral Sea. It's planned to organize experimental areas on the reserve fields of Karakalpakstan, the dried-up bottom of the Aral Sea, including on the lands of a forest fund of the sea. Permanent public transport will be launched from Central Market in Nukus to the territory of International Innovation Center in Nukus district. The center has recently formed a gene pool of stippy and ornamental plants that are resistant to salinization and drought. 13 species of flora are currently being tested here. Corruption in sport is not uncommon. Unfortunately, it concerns the Uzbek sport as well. Uzbek media quite often write about the bribes in the sphere. Many athletes are charged money to attend the international competitions. Our next report is about how does the Ministry of Physical Culture and Sports deal with such troubles? What shortcomings are said to be eliminated this year? These and other issues were on the agenda of a press conference held in the capital.
In January of this year, the government adopted a corresponding resolution to eliminate the existing shortcomings in this sphere. In accordance with the document, first of all, it's necessary to provide schools and other educational institutions with sports equipment. According to available information, sports clubs located in remote areas of the country do not have sufficient conditions for conducting physical education lessons. To create volleyball sections, it's planned to purchase sport equipment for 7,500 secondary schools. Equipment will be also purchased for boxing sections at 230 sports schools. All these reforms will be carried out in stage based on the production capacity of enterprises. One of the topics that caused dissatisfaction with the majority of users of social networks is related to the presence of elements of corruption in the field of sport. We often hear how parents of participants in international competitions are extorted money. As you know, when traveling abroad, a special order is issued for each team member, which also indicates the amount allocated. The state does not feel any need and without problems pays all the expenses related to accommodation, training and etc. Parents should not be charged any funds, but some coaches break the rules. This is what undermines public confidence in sport. In order to solve this problem, we are working on developing interactive services and a mobile application for parents. The process of selecting talented young athletes and attracting them to national teams will be implemented in stages. 230 national teams are expected to participate in international sports events scheduled for this year. At the same time, it's planned to build additional 36 sports schools in 9 cities, 26 remote regions and villages of our country. Thus, more than 30,000 students will be engaged in sports every day.
A briefing on the upcoming Tashkent International Investment Forum, scheduled for March 5 and 6, was organized in Jakarta. Representatives of the local business community and the media attended the event.
Participants of the briefing had a chance to receive information not only about the upcoming Tashkent International Investment Forum, but also about Uzbekistan's policy in the field of liberalization of the economy. A brochure with information about the forum and tourist attractions was prepared. During the question and answer session, participants were able to ask questions related to economy, foreign investments, as well as the reforms being implemented in this direction. The guests were interested in the possibility of cooperation in the textile industry, hotel business and other areas.
The World Health Organization says new cases of coronavirus infections are not rising dramatically outside of China. That is, apart from on a cruise liner now quarantined at a Japanese port. A WHO spokesperson said this on Thursday.
The number of countries reporting cases has still not changed, and outside the cases on the Diamond Princess cruise ship, we're not seeing a dramatic increase in transmission outside China, and that is the current picture. We're still saying to governments around the world that we still have an opportunity to prepare for the potential spread of the virus. Regarding the Diamond Princess cruise ship, which is currently quarantined in Yokohama, 218 passengers have tested positive for the virus, which does represent the largest cluster of COVID-19 cases outside China.
A further 44 cases were reported on the Diamond Princess on Thursday. Authorities say some elderly people will finally be allowed to disembark on Friday.
Nancy Pelosi, the top Democrat in Congress, on Thursday accused President Donald Trump of abusing his power and interfering in the criminal case of his convicted friend and advisor, Roger Stone.
This is an abuse of power that the president is again trying to manipulate federal law enforcement to serve his political interest.
Trump this week angrily tweeted about Justice Department prosecutors who recommended Stone be sentenced to up to 9 years in prison. After his tweets, the DOJ overruled their own lawyers and withdrew the sentencing recommendation. That reversal sparked criticism that Trump was meddling in the case to cut his friend a break.
Isn't your tweet political interference?
No, not at all. He was treated very badly. 9 years recommended.
He had no involvement in that. He did not have a conversation with the Attorney General.
The White House denies Trump discussed the matter with Attorney General William Barr. But Democrats on Wednesday said the sentencing fiasco was another example of the president and his appointee putting Trump's interests above the law.
Attorney General William Barr ought to be ashamed and embarrassed and resign.
And this is now what the Justice Department has become, essentially Bill Barr acting as the personal lawyer for the president's interests and not in the interests of the American people.
The most powerful person in the country, literally changing the rules to benefit a crony guilty of breaking the law.
On Thursday, Pelosi added this.
The president is what he is. He thinks he's above the law. He has no respect for the rule. But where are the Republicans to speak out on this blatant violation?
Some Republicans did express muted concern.
I think this is a situation where the tweet was very problematic.
I don't think the president should have tweeted about an ongoing case.
But Republicans have mostly shrugged off the matter, even as the president has ramped up his defense of Roger Stone.
Roger Stone for doing, nobody even knows what he did.
A jury found Stone guilty in November on 7 counts of lying to Congress, obstruction, and witness tampering. Prosecutors charged Stone had lied about his ties to WikiLeaks, the group that disseminated hacked emails damaging to Democrats in the 2016 election. The DOJ lawyers said Stone lied to protect Trump from looking bad. 4 attorneys who prosecuted Stone quit the case after the DOJ withdrew their sentencing recommendations. In tweets, Trump attacked the attorneys and the judge overseeing the case. On Thursday, he accused a juror in the case of political bias, citing a report from Fox News. Attorney General Barr will testify before a panel of lawmakers about the sentencing next month. Roger Stone is set to be sentenced next week. Trump on Wednesday declined to say whether he was considering a pardon for his friend.
Tesla on Thursday, in an about-face, announced plans to raise $2 billion in a stock offering to take advantage of an astronomical jump in its share price. This coming despite CEO Elon Musk repeatedly telling investors that the company didn't need Wall Street's help. Just last month, Musk said, quote, "It doesn't make sense to raise money. Diluting the company to pay down debt doesn't sound like a wise move." But only 2 weeks after that comment, the company will now offer 2.65 million new Tesla shares, with Musk and board member Larry Ellison participating in the offering.
In terms of production,
Tesla says it plans to use the cash to strengthen its balance sheet and for general corporate purposes. Tesla shares initially fell on the news, but then rose on Thursday. Its stock has more than tripled since October, when the company posted a rare quarterly profit.
The joint resolution, as amended, is passed.
The U.S. Senate on Thursday passed a bill limiting President Donald Trump's ability to wage war against Iran. The vote is a rebuke to Trump a month after he ordered a drone strike that killed a top Iranian commander, a move that prompted Tehran to fire more than a dozen ballistic missiles at U.S. forces stationed in Iraq. The bill requires the president to withdraw U.S. troops engaged in hostilities with Iran unless he obtains congressional approval.
Those of us in this body, and maybe especially those of us in this body who didn't wear the uniform and didn't serve, we have a special obligation to make sure that we deliberate carefully before we send troops into harm's way.
Proponents say the measure reasserts Congress's role in declaring war after decades of ceding control to the White House over the course of several administrations. But the bill specifically mentions Iran, and the measure was born out of fears Trump could intentionally or inadvertently bring the U.S. into armed conflict with Tehran. Trump opposed the bill, tweeting, "It is very important for our country's security that the United States Senate not vote for the Iran War Powers Resolution. If my hands were tied, Iran would have a field day. Sends a very bad signal. The Democrats are only doing this as an attempt to embarrass the Republican Party."
This resolution is going to pass with a bipartisan majority of senators in support, a rarity these days. If this is purely an attempt to embarrass the president, well, it's going to be a bipartisan one.
Republicans control the Senate, but 8 members of the president's party joined Democrats to pass the War Powers Resolution 55-45. Opponents say the bill's passage sends the wrong message to Tehran.
Iran, take note. If you continue on the path that you are on with your malign activities, it is going to take you to a very bad place. I'd urge a no vote.
The current resolution is adopted.
The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives passed a similar resolution last month, but there are enough differences between the Senate version and the House's that it must pass that chamber again before it can be sent to Trump's desk. Trump has promised to veto the measure. The bill would require 2/3 of the Senate to override the veto and become law.
So far, this has been all the news we intended to share with you today. Stand by